They called it an accident, but I knew that the fire that night was no mistake. It was lit by the very woman I once called my daughter-in-law. From the ashes, I learned one thing. Some people don't kill you with a gun, but with a fake smile. I was burned to death, but the mother who fell that night has returned. I will claim justice with these very hands. Before we begin this story, let me know where you are listening from in the comments below. My name is Christine Walker. I'm 68 years old, and what I'm about to tell you today will forever change the way you see your own family. The smell of smoke still clung to my hair long after the fire trucks had left. I stood at the edge of what used to be our family home. 3 generations worth of laughter, Sunday roasts, and piano lessons, now reduced to blackened ribs of timber. The November wind whistled through the ashes, sharp as regret. Somewhere inside the silence, I swear, I could still hear my husband's voice echoing from the kitchen, asking if I wanted tea. People say when you lose your house, you lose memories. That's a lie. The memories stay. They haunt you, flickering behind your eyelids when you close them. What you really lose is control. The feeling that you can still decide what comes next. At 68, control is a fragile illusion, and I could already feel it slipping through my fingers. Rebecca arrived first, immaculate as always. Not a hair out of place, not a speck of ash on her pale coat. She put her arm around me, smiling the way one might comfort a stranger for the cameras. "Christine," she whispered, her tone silk over steel. "You'll stay with us for a while. It's safer that way." Her hand on mine was cold, too cold, and in that coldness, a shiver crept up my spine. The kind of instinct only age and sorrow can teach you. I didn't know why yet, but I knew I was stepping into a house that wasn't meant to keep me safe. David arrived minutes later, his tie loosened, his face pale beneath the smoke haze. My son, my only child. He hugged me with a stiffness that didn't belong to him, like someone who had been told how to comfort but forgotten how to feel it. "Just for a few weeks, Mom," he said, "until we sort things out." "Of course," I murmured, watching the reflection of the flames still dancing in his eyes. He didn't know. He couldn't. As the firefighters packed up, one of them handed me a melted picture frame. Inside was a photograph, David at 10, holding a model airplane. My husband's hand rested on his shoulder. That picture had survived when everything else turned to ash. I clutched it so tightly that the glass cut my palm, but I didn't let go. Pain, at least, reminded me I was still alive. That night, when the last ember died, I followed Rebecca and David to their car. The headlights cut through the smoke like blades. I told myself I was grateful. That family was what mattered now. But somewhere deep in my chest, a voice whispered, "Be careful. Not all rescues are acts of kindness." The ride to their house was silent except for the hum of the tires on wet asphalt. Rebecca kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror. I looked away, pretending to study the rain. The streetlights painted her face in flashes. Warm, then cold, warm, then cold. Like the rhythm of a warning I couldn't yet decode. When we pulled into their driveway, I noticed how clean everything was. Sterile, almost. No toys scattered on the lawn, no bikes against the fence. Just order. Perfect, suffocating order. Inside, the air smelled of lemon disinfectant instead of dinner. The walls were white, bare, not a single photograph of family. I had the eerie feeling I'd entered not a home, but a stage set. one where every object had been placed for effect, and none of them for love. Rebecca showed me to the guest room. "We've prepared everything for you," she said sweetly. Her voice never cracked, never faltered. "You'll be comfortable here." I thanked her. That's what polite people do when walking into a trap. After she left, I sat on the edge of the bed, listening. The house didn't breathe. It hummed, quietly, mechanically. Somewhere behind the wall, a vent clicked on and off. I felt the weight of my age pressing down, not from the years I'd lived, but from the years I feared would be taken from me. Years of dependency, of being a burden. That was the one thing I'd sworn never to become. I thought about calling my friend Linda, or maybe staying at a motel. But pride and the shame of losing everything pinned me to that bed. I convinced myself it would be fine. It was just a few weeks. David said so. When Rebecca came back later with a cup of chamomile tea, I forced a smile. "You didn't have to," I said. "Oh, Christine," she murmured, setting the cup down. "You're family. Of course I have to." The tea smelled faintly bitter. Maybe the herbs, maybe my imagination. Either way, I didn't drink it. Before she left, she paused by the door and looked at me. Not with warmth, but with an almost clinical curiosity. Like she was studying a patient, measuring how long it would take for the medicine to work. Then she smiled again, that same perfect smile, and closed the door behind her. The moment the latch clicked, I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The silence pressed in again, heavy and deliberate. I wanted to sleep, but my mind kept replaying the fire, the flash, the roar, the sudden collapse of everything I'd built. And yet, as awful as that night had been, a darker truth began to take shape. Losing my home wasn't the end. It was the beginning of someone else's plan. Down the hall, I heard footsteps. Slow, measured. Then David's voice, muffled through the door. "Just a few weeks, Mom. We'll figure it out." I almost answered him, almost told him how much I loved him. But I didn't. Because I suddenly realized, for the first time in my life, I didn't trust the place I was calling home. Mourning in Rebecca's house didn't begin. It activated. Light arrived like it had been scheduled by an algorithm. Thin, pale bars slipping through the blinds in perfect order, painting the room into obedient shapes. The air smelled faintly of lemon disinfectant and something metallic underneath, the scent of control. I lay there for a while, listening. No birds, no pipes, no footsteps overhead. Just the quiet hum of a machine that decided when this house would breathe. When I finally sat up, I saw that everything around me had been arranged with mathematical precision. The pillows perfectly aligned, the comforter tucked sharp as paper folds, the curtains measured to the same exact length. On the nightstand sat a single framed photo of David, Rebecca, and the children. Their smiles were identical, small, perfect, hollow. Even Lily's little grin seemed forced, as though someone had told her what happiness should look like. I touched the glass. It was cold, lifeless, like the room. When I stepped into the hallway, my slippers made no sound. The house had been built to swallow noise. The walls gleamed white, hung with framed motivational quotes about order, routine, clarity. Not one family picture, not one imperfection. A corridor without history. Rebecca was already in the kitchen, immaculate as a mannequin. Her blonde hair shone under the downlights, her movements smooth and mechanical as she arranged plates that already looked arranged enough. "Good morning, Christine," she said, not turning fully toward me. "Did you sleep?" "I did," I lied. The table was set for 3. Rebecca, David, and order itself. 2 slices of dry toast, a measured cup of coffee, an orange sectioned evenly. I sat down, feeling out of place among the symmetry. David entered, half-dressed for work, tie hanging loose. He kissed Rebecca on the cheek, precise, practiced, and gave me a smile that didn't quite make it to his eyes. "Morning, Mom. We'll get things sorted soon, okay? Insurance, the rebuild, just a few weeks here." "Of course," I said softly. "I'm grateful." He nodded and left, footsteps fading like an afterthought. When the door clicked shut, Rebecca continued wiping an already spotless counter. "You'll find everything you need," she said. "Just, please don't move things around. The kids need structure. Stability keeps them calm." Structure, stability, words that meant obedience. I smiled faintly. "I understand." She looked at me then, really looked, and for a brief second, I saw something sharp flicker in her eyes. Then she smiled again, smooth and empty. Wonderful. By afternoon, the silence in the house pressed against me like a physical thing. No laughter, no music, not even the creak of a settling beam. I wandered from room to room, a ghost among pristine furniture. Then I heard it, a faint sound that didn't belong. A piano note. One hesitant, trembling key that floated up through the vents. I followed it downstairs, through a narrow corridor into a small basement room where the sound had come from. Lily sat before an upright piano, her small fingers hovering above the keys as if they might burn her. The dust cover was half folded back, like she'd opened it in secret. "Sweetheart," I whispered. She jumped. "Grandma, I didn't hear you." "Go on," I said. "Play." Her eyes darted toward the door. "Mom says it's too loud. It echoes." "Music's supposed to echo," I smiled. "It means the walls are listening." She hesitated. I reached out, pressed middle C. The sound rose, pure and fragile, hanging in the air like a heartbeat. "There," I said. "Now it's awake." We played a scale together. Awkward, uneven, beautiful. For a few minutes, the basement came alive. Lily's giggle escaped before she could stop it, and I felt something in my chest loosen, something I'd forgotten how to name. Then heels clicked on the floor above, slow, sharp. Lily's hands froze. "Don't tell her," she whispered. "I won't," I promised. The footsteps faded, but her fear stayed. That night, I couldn't sleep. The air vents hummed like someone whispering through the walls. I stared at the ceiling, counting the rhythm of the machinery, trying to believe it was just the house. But beneath the mechanical breathing, I sensed something watching. Around 2, the door creaked open. My heart seized. "Ethan?" I whispered. He stepped inside, a silhouette outlined by the hallway light. 13 years old, pale, thin, eyes too old for his face. "Grandma," he breathed, "you need to leave." I sat up. "Why would you say that?" "She doesn't want you here." His voice was flat, scared. "She says you make Dad weak. She says you're better gone." The way he said it, "better gone," made my skin crawl. "She's angry?" I asked softly. "She's planning something," he said, his voice barely a whisper now. "I heard her talking on the phone. Please go. Please." He reached out and gripped my hand. His fingers were cold, trembling. That small, desperate touch carried all the fear he couldn't speak. "Thank you for telling me," I said quietly. "You're brave, Ethan." He shook his head. "You don't understand." Then he was gone, melting back into the hallway like a shadow swallowed by light. When the door clicked shut, I sat there in the dark, listening. The vents hummed again. The silence thickened. I could almost hear the pulse of the house itself. Steady, deliberate, like a heart that wasn't mine. "You're not safe here." His words repeated until they became part of the rhythm of the room. By dawn, I still hadn't slept. I washed my face with cold water until I felt something like focus. The woman in the mirror looked older, but not defeated. Her eyes had learned something during the night, something dangerous. "They think you're fragile," I told her reflection. "Don't prove them right." When I came downstairs, Rebecca was humming while packing the kids' lunches, her voice soft and tuneless. She smiled without looking up. "Sleep well?" "Like a stone," I said, setting my mug exactly where she would have placed it. For half a second, her expression cracked, just a flicker of something sharp beneath the sugar. Then, the smile returned. That was when I knew the truth. This wasn't a home. It was a stage set for a woman who couldn't stand unpredictability. But I'd lived through real fire. I knew how to survive inside smoke. Rebecca wanted me contained, controlled, forgotten. She'd misjudged one thing. I wasn't her victim. I was the only one in this house still awake. Ethan's warning haunted me for days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his pale face in the dark, heard that broken whisper. "She's planning something." I didn't run. I'd done enough running in my life. From loss, from age, from the slow fading of purpose. But this was different. This was survival. The house around me continued its perfect routine. The same mechanical rhythm that now felt like a coded message. Every click, every hum, every door closing softly somewhere down the hall. Rebecca's world was clockwork, precise, efficient, soulless. She smiled at me every morning, her voice sugar-coated with civility. "You look well today, Christine. How's the room?" "Lovely," I'd answer, pretending not to notice that my personal things kept moving. My comb no longer on the dresser, the sweater I'd folded now hanging differently. Little shifts, deliberate and quiet, gaslighting by inches. I started to mark them in a small notebook I kept hidden beneath the pillow. Every movement, every misplaced object, every time the thermostat reset itself in the middle of the night. Facts were my new form of prayer. Then, one morning, Ethan slipped a note under my door. No words, just a small drawing, a key. I understood. That afternoon, when Rebecca left for errands, I pretended to nap until the sound of the garage door faded. Then I went searching. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. Ethan appeared at the end of the hallway, his face pale but determined. "Follow me," he whispered. He led me to David's office, a room Rebecca rarely entered, probably because it was already under her control. The door was locked. Ethan pulled from his pocket a small, crooked piece of metal, a handmade key, rough but clever. He inserted it, twisted twice, and the latch clicked open. "Where did you—" "I made it," he said quickly. "Just hurry." Inside, the office smelled faintly of cedar and paper. David's old books lined the walls, but half the shelves were now occupied by binders labeled in Rebecca's neat handwriting. Expenses, insurance, legal. We moved carefully, listening for the hum of her car outside. I opened drawers, flipped through files, mostly financial statements and medical forms, until one folder caught my eye. It was labeled Christine Walker, Contingency. My hand froze on the tab. Inside were legal documents, power of attorney forms, and something worse, a draft petition for guardianship. My name, her signature. Words like diminished capacity, unsafe alone, recommended full-time care. Each page was a slow, quiet murder. At the back, I found a letter addressed to an attorney. As discussed, should Christine's mental decline accelerate, I will ensure placement before David can intervene. Timing is key. Timing. My stomach turned cold. The fire, the invitation to move in, the gaslighting. It was all preparation. I whispered, "She's building a case against me." Ethan looked at the papers, then at me. I knew she was doing something, but not this. "She's not just cruel," I said. "She's strategic." For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. The room swayed. The papers trembled in my hands. I thought about my late husband, about the life I'd built from ashes more than once. And then a strange calm settled over me, cold and clear. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was angry. "I'm not running from fire this time," I said quietly. "I'm going to fight it." Ethan's eyes widened. "What will you do?" I didn't answer right away. I gathered the papers, snapped quick photos with my phone, each click of the camera like a heartbeat. I stored the images in a hidden folder, backed them up to the cloud. Then I slipped everything back exactly where it had been. No trace, no sign. Ethan watched me with a mix of fear and awe. "You're not scared?" "Of her?" I smiled. "Sweetheart, I've already lived through worse women. Time, loss, and death. She's just louder." He almost laughed, but the sound caught in his throat. "You can't let her know I helped." "I won't." Before leaving, he pressed something into my palm, a small piece of metal shaped like a keychain, but crudely made. "If you ever get locked in, use this," he said. "It's strong." My throat tightened. "Thank you?" When Rebecca returned, I was back in the guest room, pretending to read. She peeked in, smiling that precise, polished smile. "Everything all right?" "Perfect," I said. She left, satisfied. But something in the air between us had changed. I knew it, and so did she. The balance had shifted, however slightly. That night, as I lay awake, I scrolled through the photos on my phone. The documents, the signatures, the proof. Each image was a weapon. I could hear Ethan moving softly in the hallway, checking that I was safe. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard creaked, deliberate and slow. Rebecca was awake too, watching, calculating. I closed my eyes and breathed evenly, pretending to sleep. But my mind was already planning. If she thought she could bury me under her lies, she'd soon learn. Ashes remember. Because when you've lost everything, your home, your safety, your peace, the only thing left to fear is doing nothing. That was the night Christine Walker decided to fight back. I started keeping my phone in my pocket like a weapon. Not for calls or photos this time, but for proof. Rebecca had begun her little game, quiet at first, then louder in its precision. It started with the small things. My comb gone from the dresser, my sweater folded differently, the light switch flipped the opposite way. Then came the sharper turns. "Christine," she said one morning, standing in my doorway, arms crossed with that gentle smile that meant danger. "Did you forget to take your pills again? You left the bottle open." I didn't have any pills. Her voice was soft, concerned, beautifully rehearsed. "You must be more careful. You know how confusion can happen at your age." The words dropped into the air like tiny blades. Confusion. Your age. "I didn't leave it open," I said evenly. "Maybe someone moved it." She tilted her head. No one goes into your room but you. I could almost hear the click of a camera in her tone. Another note in her growing case file. That night, I made my own move. I opened the voice recorder on my phone and began capturing her voice whenever she came near. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. Rebecca filled silence like a politician, calculated, smiling, full of poison dressed as patience. Over the next few days, her traps multiplied. She forgot to invite me to dinner, then told David I declined. She accidentally left my laundry soaking overnight, then clucked her tongue about my forgetfulness. It was a masterpiece of psychological erosion, gaslighting done with surgical finesse. But she didn't know she was being recorded. Every sigh, every sharpened phrase, every subtle accusation. Mine now. Ethan noticed first. One afternoon, I caught him watching from the hallway as Rebecca asked me the same question twice, her tone rehearsed, pitying. After she left, he whispered, "She's trying to make you look crazy." "I know," I said. "That's why we're documenting everything." He grinned, a flash of courage on a frightened face. "Grandma's got evidence." David, though, was harder. My son had always lived in denial when it came to unpleasant truths. Rebecca knew that about him. She spoke to him in half tones, in plausible sentences, meant to reshape reality. "She's been misplacing things again," I overheard her say once when she thought I was in the garden. Yesterday, she left the stove on. I hadn't cooked a thing all day. From my spot near the stairs, I watched David rub his temples, sigh, and nod. "She's been through a lot, Rebecca. Just be patient." Patient. The word twisted like a knife. Later that night, he brought me tea. "Mom," he said gently, "maybe you're just tired. Stress can do strange things." "Stress didn't move the comb," I said. "Or the pills. Or the sweater." His brow creased, but he didn't answer. I could see it. The tug of loyalty between his mother and his wife. He wanted peace more than truth. Peace was easier. Truth required confrontation. The following morning, I woke early. Rebecca was already in the kitchen, humming softly. My phone recorded from inside my pocket as I poured coffee. "Did you sleep?" she asked sweetly. "Fine." She leaned closer, the smell of her perfume like sugar overwrought. "You were walking around last night? You came downstairs? Did you forget?" "No," I said calmly. She frowned, all polite worry. "You're sure? Because David said he heard footsteps." "It's okay if you don't remember. We all lose track of time." I looked at her, and for the first time, she flinched at what she saw in my eyes. Clarity. "I remember everything," I said. She smiled again, but the edges of it trembled. 2 nights later, while cleaning the side table near my bed, I found something small tucked behind the lamp. A black device no bigger than a lighter. A red dot blinked once. Faintly. A recorder. I froze, heart hammering. Carefully, I pressed stop and checked the tag taped to its bottom. In tiny, neat letters, it read, "Confusion. Morning 7:30 a.m." For a second, I couldn't breathe. She hadn't just been planting doubt. She'd been collecting it. She wanted an archive of my unraveling. Except, I wasn't unraveling. She was. I pocketed the device, turned off the light, and sat in the dark for a long time. My reflection in the mirror looked back, steady, calculating. "Two can play this game," I whispered. The next morning, I placed the recorder on the table beside my coffee, visible but casual. When Rebecca entered, her eyes flicked toward it, just once, but I caught it. The faintest ripple of panic behind her control. "Good morning," I said, smiling. She smiled back, too fast. Good morning. We both sat. For the first time since the fire, the power shifted. I had evidence. She had theater. And somewhere in between, David was beginning to notice the cracks. That evening, he lingered at dinner, his fork still in hand as he looked between us. You two seem tense, Rebecca laughed lightly. Oh, you know how mothers and daughters-in-law can be. I met his gaze and didn't look away. We get along fine, don't we, Rebecca? Her smile faltered, just a heartbeat too long. David noticed. He didn't say anything, but his eyes lingered on her, curious now, cautious. It was small, but it was movement. And in a house like this, movement meant life. That night, when I replayed the audio from my phone, I heard everything. Her patronizing tone, her rehearsed sighs, her insinuations, proof, my proof. I lay awake with the soft blue glow of the screen lighting the room. The war wasn't over, not even close. But for the first time, I wasn't surviving. I was strategizing. Rebecca wanted confusion? I'd give her clarity so sharp it could cut through her lies. She wanted to record me breaking down? Then I'd let her capture what she'd created, her own unraveling. Because now I had her voice. And sooner or later, the world would hear it. By the time the weekend came, the house felt smaller, like it was folding inward. Rebecca had perfected the art of pretending nothing was wrong, while every breath between us throbbed with tension. She smiled too much now, tight porcelain smiles that hid calculation. She'd begun locking the office door again, even when she only stepped out for coffee. I pretended not to notice, but every turn of that lock felt like an alarm in my chest. Ethan did notice. That boy saw everything. One evening, while Rebecca was bathing Lily, he slipped into my room, eyes wide, voice low. She moved the files again? He whispered. Dad doesn't know. Where? Top drawer in the office, the one with the broken handle. My pulse quickened. That drawer had been empty last week. When can we look? I asked. Tomorrow, he said. She has her hair appointment at 4. I smiled, grim, proud. Good. We'll be careful. The next day stretched like wire. Every sound made me jump. The hum of the dryer, the shuffle of mail, the whisper of her perfume moving down the hall. At 4, her car backed out of the driveway, and the silence that followed was almost holy. Now, Ethan said. The key he'd made still fit. We entered the office, hearts pounding in sync. Dust danced in the beam of sunlight from the blinds. The drawer stuck halfway, then gave with a snap. Inside were thick folders bound with rubber bands, labels written in Rebecca's perfect print. Insurance, medical, property, contingency. I reached for the one marked insurance. There, between dull spreadsheets and typed correspondence, was a single sheet that didn't belong. A life insurance policy. David's name. My name. Rebecca's name. And next to beneficiary, Rebecca Harper Walker. The policy was dated 3 weeks before the fire. Value, $2,000. The paper trembled in my hands. Behind it, I found a notarized document, power of attorney in Rebecca's favor. Except the signature scrawled at the bottom wasn't mine. It was close, practiced, but not mine. She forged it, Ethan whispered. Yes, I said softly. And she made sure it would look perfect in court. My vision blurred for a moment, a pulse of fury and disbelief colliding in my chest. She'd burned my home, framed me as senile, and now she was waiting for me to die. Conveniently, profitably. The room tilted, but I caught the desk's edge. Ethan, I said quietly, we're going to photograph everything, quickly. He nodded, already pulling out his phone. We snapped every page, every signature, the envelope's date, the serial number of the policy. My fingers shook, but my aim was steady. Once done, we slid everything back exactly as it had been. No trace. Before leaving, I looked around the room, at the tidy bookshelves, the photo of David and Rebecca smiling on their wedding day. The frame caught the light, and I noticed something. Her hand gripping his too tightly, control disguised as affection. She built this whole world on lies, I murmured. Ethan looked up at me, eyes shining with both fear and admiration. What are you going to do? Protect my son, I said, and make her regret underestimating me. That night, I called an old friend, Martha, once a paralegal before retirement. My hands shook as I spoke. Martha, I need you to look at something. A signature, a power of attorney form. She hesitated. Christine, what are you mixed up in? Something that started with a fire, I said, and ends with $2 million. Her breath caught. Send it to me, quietly. I sent the photos. Within an hour, she replied, This signature isn't yours. Whoever forged it, they knew what they were doing, but not enough. The curvature on the C is wrong. Relief and rage warred inside me. Proof. At last, proof. But victory tasted like fear. Because proof only matters if you live long enough to use it. Rebecca came home early. The garage door thudded shut, the rhythm of her heels slicing through the quiet. I'd barely closed my laptop when she appeared in the doorway, face unreadable. Christine, she said. Upstairs is private. You know that. Her tone wasn't angry. It was worse. Calm, measured, dangerous. I forced a smile. I was just dusting. Thought David's papers looked a little cluttered. Her eyes narrowed. Cluttered? She stepped closer, too close, the faint scent of her perfume turning suffocating. David doesn't like people touching his things. I'm his mother. And I'm his wife, she said smoothly. Which means I handle the details. There it was, the claim of ownership, not of the house, but of him, of everything. I held her gaze, steady. I'm sure he appreciates your organization. For the first time, she smiled. Not the polite one, but the real one. The predator's smile. Organization keeps things from burning down again. The sentence landed like a slap. My fingers clenched at my sides. She knew exactly what she was saying. You should rest, Christine, she said lightly. Stress isn't good for your heart. Then she left, her heels clicking up the stairs, slow and certain, the rhythm of control reclaiming the house. I stood there long after she was gone, trembling, not from fear, but from restraint. She thought she'd cornered me, but all she'd done was give me confirmation. Her words, her forged papers, her perfect composure. Each piece was now part of a puzzle I intended to finish. I walked back to my room, locked the door, and whispered to the dark. She's not building a case against me anymore. I'm building one against her. And for the first time since the fire, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a hunter. I used to think courage was loud. Fire alarms, shouted warnings, desperate escapes. But real courage, I've learned, is quiet. It hides behind steady hands and calm voices. It's the ability to look your predator in the eye and smile. The day of the interview, I wore blue. Not morning black, not invisible beige. Blue. The color of truth. The color David once said made me look unshakable. Detective Monroe's office smelled faintly of coffee and rain. She was younger than I'd expected, sharp-eyed but kind. I liked that. She didn't look at me the way most people did, like a fragile artifact of the past. Mrs. Walker, she began. Thank you for coming in. We're still processing the fire report, but there were anomalies. Anomalies. That word again. It had followed me since the night of the fire, whispered in reports and insurance notes. I reached into my purse and laid my phone on the table. Detective, I said evenly. I believe I can help you with that. Her brows lifted slightly. Go on. I tapped the screen. Audio files filled the display, each labeled carefully by date. These are recordings from the past few weeks, I said. You'll hear my daughter-in-law, her tone, her words, her manipulation. And these, I swiped again, are photos, insurance policies, forged documents. One names her as the beneficiary of my life insurance, $2 million. Monroe didn't interrupt. She just leaned forward, studying the images. Then she whistled softly under her breath. She forged your signature? Yes. My friend, a retired paralegal, confirmed it. The detective nodded slowly, her pen tapping against her pad. You've been documenting all this. I'm old, detective, I said. But I'm not senile. That made her smile, just slightly. No, I don't think you are. When David entered, my stomach clenched. He looked tired, wrung out between loyalty and disbelief. Rebecca wasn't there, of course. She told him she was too emotional to attend. That was her style. Absent when the truth started breathing too close to her neck. Mom, he said quietly. What's this about? I turned the phone toward him. About this. He scrolled through the photos, eyes narrowing as the pieces began to take shape. I watched the denial drain from his face, replaced by something heavier. She forged my name, he said finally, voice tight, on your documents. She's been planning it since before the fire, I said. Gaslighting, recordings, moving things around. You didn't see it, but she wanted to make me look unstable. And when that didn't work, I let the rest hang in the air. He closed his eyes. My God! Detective Monroe cleared her throat gently. Mr. Walker, the investigation already points to the use of accelerants in your mother's house fire. This new evidence changes things. If these files are verified, it gives us motive. David sank back, pale, jaw clenched. I reached for his hand but didn't force it. You were her shield, I said softly. She used your faith against you. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then quietly, she said she loved you. She loves control, I answered. We spent 2 hours going through details. Dates, messages, bank transfers. Each fact built upon the next like bricks, forming a wall between Rebecca and the world she'd crafted. Monroe promised to file for a warrant to seize Rebecca's devices, her accounts, her truth. When it was done, I felt both lighter and older, like something inside me had burned clean. Outside, the sky was a clear autumn blue, cold and endless. David and I walked to the car without speaking. He looked hollow, like a man waking from a long sleep. At the door, he said, Mom, I'm sorry. For what? For not seeing it. For believing her. I smiled. A small sad thing. Love blinds us. It's how the worst people survive. He nodded, eyes shining, and for a heartbeat, I saw my little boy again, the one who used to hold my hand crossing streets. We'll fix this, he said. That evening, I returned to the house. Rebecca wasn't home yet. The air felt strange, off balance. I moved through the rooms, each one too clean, too quiet, and finally stopped by the piano in the basement. Lily and Ethan were there, waiting. Ethan met my gaze. Did it work? Yes, I said softly. It's starting. Lily climbed onto the bench, her small hands brushing the keys. She played a shaky scale and I joined in, matching her rhythm. The sound filled the air, imperfect and alive. For the first time, I felt the house fight back. Upstairs, the front door opened. Rebecca's voice floated down the stairwell, sweet, distant. "Christine, we need to talk." I looked at the children. "Go upstairs, both of you. Close your doors." When they were gone, I sat alone at the piano, fingers resting on middle C. The note lingered in the air, steady as a heartbeat. Rebecca appeared at the top of the stairs, perfectly composed, her smile too bright. "You've been busy?" she said. "So have you," I answered. The silence between us was thick, electric. The first real confrontation hadn't even begun, but the stage was set. I wasn't the woman who'd walked into this house weeks ago, broken, uncertain, afraid of becoming a burden. That version of me had burned down with the house. This version, had come back from the ashes with evidence in her pocket and purpose in her spine. Later, as the house finally slept, Ethan slipped a note under my door. 3 words written in his uneven hand. "We believe you." I pressed the paper to my chest, feeling the quiet hum of something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Rebecca's empire was cracking, and soon everyone would see what lived behind her perfect smile. Tomorrow, the fight would begin in full. But tonight, I allowed myself a moment to breathe, because for the first time, I wasn't waiting to be saved. I was preparing to win. The morning after the interview felt deceptively calm. The house was quiet, even for Rebecca's standards. No humming from the kitchen, no perfume in the air, just an emptiness that pressed against the walls like a held breath. I'd expected the silence. The warrant had been issued the night before. Detective Monroe said they'd come for Rebecca's devices within 48 hours. Rebecca didn't know yet, but she would soon. I sat at the piano, tracing the keys without playing. Each note was a weapon now, each sound a memory of defiance. Lily's sheet music lay open, her handwriting childish but careful. Practice, believe, shine. For a moment, I almost allowed myself peace. Then the front door opened. Rebecca's heels clicked across the hardwood, too fast, too sharp. "Christine?" she called. Her tone was sweet, but the sugar had curdled. "In here," I said. She appeared in the doorway, immaculate as always, though her eyes looked brittle, rimmed with sleeplessness. "David tells me you've been busy." I smiled. "I've always liked being productive." Her lips tightened. "You've made serious accusations, dangerous ones. You realize that, don't you?" "I didn't accuse anyone," I said. "I just told the truth." She laughed once, short, hard. "Truth is relative, Christine, and in your case, unreliable." "Maybe," I said, "but recordings aren't." The silence that followed was deep enough to drown in. Her face froze, just for a second. Then she stepped closer, every inch of her body controlled, her voice soft as silk. "You think you can destroy me?" "No," I said quietly. "You already did that yourself." She looked at me for a long, dangerous moment, then smiled again, too wide. "You should rest. Stress isn't good for women our age." Then she turned, heels clicking like gunshots, and walked upstairs. That afternoon, Monroe called. "We've confirmed the signature forgery," she said. "And the lab found traces of accelerant residue on samples from your old property, gasoline, bought 2 days before the fire." "Rebecca?" I said. "Likely," Monroe replied. "We're obtaining the receipts now. She'll know we're closing in soon. Be careful, Mrs. Walker." I thanked her and hung up. The walls felt closer than ever. By evening, the house vibrated with a different kind of quiet, the kind that happens before something breaks. David hadn't come home. Rebecca moved through the kitchen like a shadow, her movements sharper, faster. Her phone was never out of her hand. At dinner, she smiled too much. "Lily, darling, eat your peas. Ethan, stop slouching." Then, as if remembering her lines, she turned to me. "Christine, do you ever get lonely at night?" "Not really," I said. "I keep myself company." She tilted her head. "That's good. I'd hate for you to feel forgotten." The way she said it made Ethan's fork pause, midair. When the kids finished eating, she stood abruptly. "Homework. Now." They obeyed. I sat there, watching her gather the plates with surgical precision. "David's working late?" I asked. "He's staying at the firm tonight," she said. "Deadlines?" "Of course." She turned, plates in hand, her voice casual. "You always did depend on him too much. It must be hard, losing that kind of influence." "I raised him to think for himself," I said. She smiled faintly. "Then why is he always cleaning up after you?" There it was, the real Rebecca, slipping through the cracks. I saw her jaw tighten, her eyes flick to the window, the corner of her mouth twitch. Her mask was slipping. I stood. "You're scared." "Of you?" She laughed, but it came out too high. "You're a sad old woman clinging to drama. No one believes you." "That's funny," I said, because the detective seemed convinced. For a heartbeat, she didn't breathe. Then she whispered, "You should have left when you had the chance." That night, I couldn't sleep. The air felt charged, wrong. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. "Unknown number. You've made a mistake." I stared at the message, pulse hammering. Another text came seconds later. "You don't know what I'm capable of." I didn't respond. I just saved the messages and forwarded them to Detective Monroe. A minute later, another text arrived. "Check on your grandkids. They're dreaming of fire." My blood turned to ice. I ran down the hall, knocking softly on Ethan's door. He was awake, sitting up in bed, his eyes wide. "It's her, isn't it?" he asked. "Yes," I said. Lily stirred in the next room. I checked on her, safe, asleep, the nightlight, casting soft shapes on her wall. When I returned to my room, I locked the door. My hands were steady now, my mind clear. Fear had burned away, leaving only resolve. By morning, Rebecca was gone. No car in the driveway, no note. Her phone went straight to voicemail. David called an hour later, voice tight with worry. "She took the kids," he said. "They're not at school. Their phones are off. What the hell is happening, Mom?" "She's running," I said. "What?" "She knows the investigation's closing in. She won't let go without control, and that means taking what you love most." His breath hitched. "Jesus, Mom, what do we do?" "We find them." I called Monroe. She didn't sound surprised. "We're already tracking her car," she said. "If she contacts you, don't respond. Forward everything. We'll find them." I hung up and looked out the window. The world outside was gray, cold, the kind of morning that feels like an omen. But I didn't feel helpless anymore. I'd survived fire. I'd survived gaslighting and deceit. And now, I would survive this. Rebecca thought she could erase me. She didn't understand that the very act of trying had made me indestructible. As I gathered my coat and keys, Ethan appeared at the top of the stairs, pale but resolute. "She called from a blocked number," he said, holding up his phone. "But I took a screenshot before it disappeared." I looked at the image. A glimpse of a road sign in the background, blurry but familiar. 3 lakes. "She thinks she can hide," I murmured, But she's not the only one who knows how to follow a trail. Ethan nodded, fierce in a way that made my heart swell. Let's bring them home, I said. The world outside had that heavy stillness before a storm, the kind that makes you feel the air is listening. I hadn't slept since Rebecca disappeared with the kids. The house, once too quiet, now felt hollow. Even the machines had stopped humming, as if waiting for orders. On the kitchen counter, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. No words, just a photo. Ethan's hand, held up in front of his chest, 3 fingers extended. Behind him, a blurry wooden sign in the faint shimmer of water. My breath caught. 3 lakes, I whispered. Route 9, down by the lake. I remembered that place. It had been our family's last vacation before everything went wrong. David teaching Ethan how to fish, Lily chasing dragonflies, Rebecca complaining about the lack of Wi-Fi. The memory sharpened into clarity. Ethan wasn't just sending a photo. He was sending a map. I forwarded the picture to Detective Monroe with a short message. He's guiding us. She replied instantly. We're on it. Wait for backup. But waiting wasn't an option anymore. I'd spent months being managed, doubted, dismissed. I wasn't going to sit still while my grandchildren's lives depended on timing. I grabbed my coat, keys, and the small folding knife I kept in my purse. Habit, not courage. Courage had nothing to do with this. It was something deeper. A promise. The road to Route 9 cut through long stretches of pine forest, the kind of place where the world feels ancient and the air tastes of sap and rain. My hands tightened on the wheel as the clouds rolled low over the trees. Monroe's voice crackled through the speaker. Christine, where are you? Halfway there, I said. You shouldn't. I know. But you'll need someone who understands her. There was a pause. Then quietly. Understood. Just don't do anything alone. I smiled grimly. That's not my habit anymore. An hour later, I reached the small, cracked sign, 3 Lakes Motel. Half the neon letters were dead, flickering like a dying heartbeat. Beyond it, a dirt road sloped toward the water, 3 gray lakes shimmering under a bruised sky. Rebecca's SUV was parked behind the main building. My stomach tightened, but my mind went calm, the way it does before impact. I parked down the road and called Monroe. She's here. We're 10 minutes out. Don't approach her, Christine. Please. I ended the call without promising anything. The motel looked abandoned, peeling paint, broken lights. But one of the blinds in room 12 was tilted open. A child's silhouette moved across it. Lily. I stepped closer, keeping to the trees. Every instinct screamed danger, but love is louder than fear. Through the thin wall, I heard muffled voices. Rebecca's sharp tone, a man's lower growl. Someone else was with her. Douglas Harper. I recognized the name from Monroe's notes. A man she'd been wiring payments to. My heart thudded. I needed to see them, to make sure the kids were alive. Ethan's voice cut through the wall. Mom, please, we just want to go home. Rebecca snapped. Home? That house burned down thanks to your saintly grandmother. Then silence. A chair scraped. Lily whimpered. That sound lit something inside me, a fury so clean it burned cold. I circled around back, found the narrow service path leading to the rear door. The latch was old, half rusted. I tested it quietly. It gave a little. I pressed my ear to the wall. Douglas spoke first. She's not coming. The cops will be on us by now. She'll come, Rebecca hissed. She always does. She can't help herself. I exhaled slowly. She was right. I was here. But not for her. Never again for her. I texted Monroe my location, then slipped the phone into my jacket. Every sound inside the room was magnified. The creak of the floorboards, Rebecca's pacing, the nervous shuffle of children's feet. I waited for my heartbeat to quiet enough to think. Then I knocked. Once. The room fell silent. "Rebecca?" I said, voice steady. "It's me." For a second, nothing. Then, "Of course it is," she said from the other side. "Come in, Christine." The latch clicked. I stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Cigarette smoke, fear, stale coffee. Rebecca stood near the window, Lily behind her. Douglas leaned against the wall, watching me like a guard dog waiting for a signal. "Where are the police?" she asked. "Close," I said. "Then let's make this quick." She reached into her bag. I didn't move. My pulse slowed. Focused. "Don't," I said quietly. "Not in front of them." Her hand froze. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Ethan, standing beside the bed, met my eyes and gave the smallest nod. A cue? A plan? He mouthed a single word. "Recording." The world snapped into sharp focus. My scarf hit a small microphone, the one Monroe had given me days earlier, in case Rebecca tried something. I pressed my hand to my chest, activating the signal. "Rebecca," I said gently, "you don't have to do this. You can still stop." Her expression twisted. "You think I'm the villain? After everything I've done for this family? I kept them safe. I cleaned up your messes." "You burned my home," I said. "I freed us from it," she shouted. "You were dragging us down. You—" The door burst open. Detective Monroe's voice cut through the chaos. "Police! Hands where we can see them!" Rebecca froze, the color draining from her face. Douglas moved, but an officer tackled him before he could reach the window. Lily ran to me, sobbing, her tiny arms clutching my waist. Ethan followed, trembling but unbroken. It was over in seconds. Rebecca's eyes found mine as they cuffed her. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "You'll die alone, Christine. You always were alone." I looked at her and felt nothing. "No," I said quietly. "Not anymore." Hours later, sitting in the back of Monroe's car, I watched the sun rise over the lakes. The air smelled of pine and smoke, the kind of morning that promised both endings and beginnings. Ethan leaned his head against my shoulder. Lily slept, clutching my scarf. Monroe looked at me in the rearview mirror. "You did good today." I smiled faintly. "I just followed the music." The detective frowned. "The music?" "The rhythm of the truth," I said. "You can't silence it forever. It always finds a way out." Outside, the water shimmered gold, reflecting the first clean light I'd seen in months. For the first time since the fire, I wasn't surviving. I was living. They say when a fire dies, it leaves silence. But in that motel room, silence roared louder than any flame. The air was thick with smoke, fear, and the heavy weight of truth, finally cornered. Rebecca sat on the edge of the bed, her wrists cuffed, hair falling loose from its perfect knot. The detectives' team had cleared the room, leaving only me and Monroe behind. I hadn't asked for that, but Monroe knew. Some confrontations can't happen through glass or bars. Rebecca looked up when I entered, eyes bloodshot but still calculating. "Come to gloat, Christine?" she said. Her voice was tired, but that chill precision still clung to it. "No," I answered. "I came to understand." She laughed, a low, rasping sound. "Understand? You wouldn't have lasted a day in my world. Always playing the martyr, baking cookies, pretending family means something. You think love protects people? It doesn't. It weakens them." "You mean it weakens you?" I said quietly. Her lips trembled, a crack in her control. I did what I had to. David was slipping away. The kids were. He was mine. You all were. I built everything. You were just the ghost that wouldn't leave. Her words hit like small, cold stones, but instead of hurting, they clarified everything. The fire, the manipulation, the gaslighting. It wasn't just greed. It was hunger. A craving for ownership, not love. Did you ever love him? I asked. Of course I did, she snapped. But love isn't enough. You have to control what you love, or it leaves you. He would have left me for you, just like everyone else. I couldn't let that happen. I stood still, watching her shake, her voice climbing toward hysteria. Monroe's recorder blinked quietly on the table, red light flashing like a heartbeat. I stepped closer. So, you burned down a home to keep one. Her eyes flicked toward me. Rage, regret, pride, all tangled together. It was supposed to be empty, she whispered. Just a warning. But the wind? It moved faster than I thought. The confession landed heavy in the air. Even Monroe stopped breathing for a second. You planned it, I said. Yes, she breathed. And I'd do it again. Because no one was ever going to take what's mine. She looked up, defiant. You won this round, Christine, but you'll lose the war. He'll pity you. He'll resent you. You'll die alone. I met her eyes and, for the first time, saw not a villain, but a woman, broken by her own fear of disappearing, a mirror warped beyond repair. No, I said softly. You're the one who's alone. You always were. She flinched, not at the words, but at the pity in them. Monroe nodded at me, signaling it was enough. Officers entered to escort Rebecca out. As they led her away, she turned once more, voice low, venomous. Enjoy what's left of him, Christine. You'll never fix what I broke. I didn't answer. Some people aren't meant to be fixed. Outside, the motel was quiet. The sun was rising through mist, soft and unassuming. David stood near the police car, pale and motionless, watching the officers push Rebecca inside. When he saw me, he looked torn between disbelief and heartbreak. She admitted it? He asked. Yes, I said. Every word. He swallowed hard, staring at the ground. I thought I knew her. You saw what she wanted you to see, I said gently. We all did. He nodded, jaw tightening. And the kids? They're safe, I said. They're stronger than you think, just like their father. For a long time, he didn't speak. Then he reached for my hand. I don't deserve forgiveness. Maybe not, I said. But your children deserve peace. Start there. He squeezed my hand, the smallest gesture of gratitude or apology. It didn't matter which. Sometimes healing doesn't come with words, only with the decision to keep breathing. Later, at the police station, I gave my full statement. Every lie, every file, every soundbite of Rebecca's voice became evidence. Monroe listened without interruption, then finally said, You've built one hell of a case, Christine. Not many people your age would have kept their head. I didn't keep my head, I said, smiling faintly. I just refused to lose my heart. She closed her folder. That's rarer. When I stepped outside, the air felt new, sharp with autumn, tinged with something clean. The sky stretched pale blue above the city, the same color as the dress I'd worn the day I married David's father. That memory didn't ache anymore. It just existed. Proof that life doesn't end in loss. It reshapes itself around it. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of Rebecca in that motel room lingered, the fire in her eyes, the emptiness underneath. But beneath that, I felt something unexpected. Not triumph, not relief, but release. Ethan knocked softly on my door. Grandma? I opened it. He held out a small piece of paper, the one he'd used for his secret message. On the back, he'd written 3 words in his careful hand. We're safe now. I hugged him tightly, breathing in the scent of smoke and shampoo. You're brave, I whispered. He smiled. You taught me that. After he went back to bed, I sat by the window watching the streetlights fade into dawn. The war was over. But the rebuilding, the real work, was just beginning. Rebecca had believed destruction proved strength. But standing there, alive and unbroken, I finally understood surviving without hate was the greater victory. The world outside was quiet, but this time it wasn't silence, it was peace. And somewhere deep inside, I could almost hear the echo of the piano, Lily's laughter returning to the house, Ethan's voice steady, David's hand no longer shaking. The fire had taken my home, but in its ashes, I'd found something stronger: truth, love, and the kind of courage that doesn't need to be seen to burn. 3 months after the arrest, the smell of sawdust became the scent of my new beginning. My house in Vermont wasn't grand. 2 stories, pale cedar siding, a porch that creaked when you leaned on it. But every nail, every board, felt like something stitched back together. The piano arrived last week, the same one that had once sat in the ashes of my old living room. The restoration crew said it shouldn't have survived the fire. But the strings, though warped, had held their shape, like bones that refused to break. I placed it by the window, where the light could find it again. When I pressed the first key, a single note filled the air, slightly off, imperfect, but alive. David was there, helping move boxes, sleeves rolled up, hair grayer than I remembered. Still plays, he said softly. It always did, I answered. He smiled, small and tired, and for the first time since the trial, I saw the boy he used to be, the one who believed the world could be repaired with patience and glue. Lily ran in from the kitchen, flour on her cheeks. Grandma, the cookies are ready. Cookies? I raised an eyebrow. House-shaped ones, she said proudly. Like you wanted. She led me to the oven. The scent of butter and sugar filled the air, warm and real. She'd cut the dough into tiny cottages, each one uneven, slightly lopsided, beautiful in its imperfection. Ethan stood at the counter, wiping his hands on a towel. He looked taller now, voice deeper. Detective Monroe said to tell you she misses your notes, he said. I laughed. I'll send her a pie instead. Notes don't taste as good. After dinner, we sat by the fire, not the devouring kind, but the gentle, contained glow that belonged to safety. Lily curled against me, half asleep. Ethan hummed beside the piano, tapping the same 3 keys again and again. David broke the silence. Mom, do you ever think you'll forgive her? I looked at the flames, their gold reflections dancing in the glass. Forgiveness isn't a gift you give someone else, I said. It's what you hand yourself, so you can keep living. He nodded slowly. I still can't believe I didn't see it. You saw what you needed to, I said gently. Love blinds us to danger until we're strong enough to face it. We fell quiet again. Outside, snow began to fall, silent, slow, erasing old footprints from the porch. The letter arrived 2 days later. I knew the handwriting before I opened it. Rebecca's, neat and deliberate, even now. Christine, it began. You won. I suppose you think that makes you better than me. Maybe you are. Maybe you were always stronger. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to know. I was never trying to kill you. I was trying to erase the part of me that envied you. You had something I couldn't control. Peace. The paper smelled faintly of antiseptic, the scent of a psychiatric ward. I folded it carefully, set it in the drawer beside the piano, and whispered, "Rest, Rebecca." Not in peace, just rest. Weeks passed. Life resumed its ordinary rhythm, and somehow, that ordinariness felt like a miracle. Ethan practiced piano each afternoon. Lily painted pictures for the refrigerator, and David came home from work without the shadow in his eyes. Sometimes, when the light hit just right, I'd see the faint scar on the piano's edge, blackened wood that refused to polish away. I left it there, a reminder that beauty isn't the absence of damage, but the story of surviving it. One evening, I sat alone by the window, the smell of cookies still warm in the air. I opened my notebook, the same one I'd used to track Rebecca's manipulations, and began writing again. But this time, I wrote gratitude lists. The house still stands. The children laugh again. My heart, though cracked, still beats without bitterness. I thought of fire, how it destroys, yes, but also clears space for new roots. My life had been burned to its foundation. Now I could see what truly held it up. When the first snowstorm came, we gathered in the living room, lights twinkling, the piano steady under Ethan's hands. Lily's voice rose in song, soft, shy, but certain. David joined in, his baritone rough but warm. I listened, my eyes closing, letting the sound settle deep into the part of me that had forgotten what safety felt like. When the last note faded, Ethan looked up at me. "Grandma, do you still think about the fire?" "Sometimes," I said. "But not the way you think." I remember what it taught me, that people can lose everything and still not be lost. He nodded, solemn, as if memorizing the words. I smiled. The fire didn't end us. It refined us. Later, after the kids went to bed, I walked out onto the porch. The snow had stopped. The world glowed silver under the moonlight, quiet and whole. I thought of Rebecca, somewhere far away in a place with locked doors and white walls. I thought of the detective who believed me when no one else did. I thought of the woman I used to be, the one who feared becoming a burden. She was gone now. In her place stood someone tempered, steady, unafraid to carry the weight of truth. I closed my eyes and whispered to the wind, "I'm home." When I came back inside, the oven timer dinged softly. Another batch of Lily's house-shaped cookies waited to be taken out. I laughed, slipped on my mitts, and opened the door. Warmth rolled over me. Simple, human warmth. The kind no fire could ever steal. I arranged the cookies on the counter, poured a glass of milk, and sat down to write one final line in my notebook. The flames took my house, but they gave me back my family. I paused, then added a question beneath it, one for anyone who might read my story someday. If you discovered your own daughter-in-law had burned your home for greed, would you fight? Or would you walk away? Because sometimes revenge isn't rage. It's rebuilding without hate. It's living well enough that your enemies have to watch. And as the snow fell outside and the piano hummed softly in the next room, I realized I'd already won. They say revenge is a fire that will burn both sides. But sometimes, when you dare to step through the ashes, that same fire lights the strongest part of yourself. I don't need to see Rebecca crumble to feel victorious. In truth, the winner isn't the one who causes pain, but the one who dares to keep living, to love again, and to believe that wounds can be healed. If it were you, upon discovering that someone you once called family burned down your home, would you confront them or walk away in silence? Share your thoughts below, not to judge, but to understand together. Sometimes forgiveness is the most beautiful kind of revenge life can witness.